Hi, my name is Christiane Arrivillaga, and I will be presenting some of the work we're doing with Lourdes Rey and Natalia Extremera at the Applied Positive Lab of La Universidad de Málaga. And our work is titled Emotional Intelligence Facets as Protective Factors for Problematic Digital Technology Usage in Spanish Adolescents. And I want to start by first acknowledging that digital technologies bring numerous advantages to our daily lives. We're seeing now with the pandemic just how crucial they can be to maintain some of the normality in our lives, our jobs, our schoolwork. However, inadequate usage may lead to negative psychological, social, and educational consequences. Problematic digital technology usage has been associated with depression, anxiety, school burnout, among others. Adolescents are considered a vulnerable population, given that this stage of life is characterized by emotionally charged situations and an increase in risk-taking behavior. Even now, we're asking adolescents to be even more involved with digital technology. So the aim of our study was to examine the potential protective role of emotional intelligence facets in problematic internet and smartphone users. And I want to start by some definitions. When I talk about problematic internet use, I'm referring to the internet usage that is excessive, impulsive, or risky in nature, and that leads to negative consequences on functional grounds, emotional grounds, social grounds. In light of this more broad concept, problematic smartphone use refers also to the interference that using the smartphone has on daily tasks. When I talk about emotional intelligence, I'm referring to Meyer and Salovey's model, and they understand emotional intelligence as the ability to reason effectively with emotion and emotional information, and the ability to use this information to enhance thought. The instrument we're using has four facets. First, there's self-emotion appraisal, which is the ability to recognize emotion and emotional reactions in oneself. Other emotion appraisal, which is the same ability to recognize emotions in others. The use of emotion is the ability to use emotional information to channel thought or activity. And the regulation of emotion, which refers to the ability to manage emotional reactions. Okay, and concerning our methods, what we did was our sample was comprised of 2,197 adolescents. Almost half of them were males and half of them were females. They were aged 12 to 19 years old with a mean age of 14 years, and they studied at the province of Málaga. And we used the Internet Addiction Test to measure problematic internet use, the Smartphone Addiction Scale on its short version to measure problematic smartphone use, and the Wong and Law Emotional Intelligence Scale to measure emotional intelligence. And all of these measures have been proven reliable and valid on Spanish-speaking populations. So what we did was, first, our study protocol was assessed and approved by the Ethics Committee of La Universidad de Málaga, and we invited schools to participate in our study. And those that agreed sent out consent forms to the parents, to the families, and only those adolescents who had the consent of their families completed paper-based questionnaires on their school setting. So what we did was, we conducted two logistic regression analyses, one for problematic internet use and one for problematic smartphone use. We entered as predictors the four facets of emotional intelligence and entered as covariates age and sex. And in one case, the outcome variable was problematic internet use, and in the other, the problematic smartphone use. So we conducted binary logistic regression, and what we attempted to predict was whether there was a profile of emotional intelligence facets that indicated a higher or a lower risk for developing problematic internet and smartphone use. In those categories were determined by their scores on the Internet Addiction Test and the Smartphone Addiction Scale using standard cutoff scores. Okay, here's what we found. First, concerning problematic internet use, we found that age was a significant predictor. The older the adolescents were, the most likely they were problematic internet users. We also found that higher other emotion appraisal and lower use of emotion and lower emotion regulation were significant predictors of problematic internet use. And this complete model was significant and explained between 5.4 and 7.3% of the variance in problematic internet use. Now, concerning problematic smartphone use, we also found that higher age was a significant predictor, And we also found that sex was a significant predictor. And since we coded 0 for males and 1 for females, this result indicates that females were at a higher risk of problematic problematic smartphone use, sorry. And we also found that higher other emotion appraisal and lower use of emotion and emotion regulation were significant predictors of problematic smartphone use. And this model was significant and explained between 6.1 and 8.7% of the variance in problematic smartphone use. Okay, so what do we conclude from these results? First, we found that 3 of the facets of emotional intelligence help predict problematic internet and smartphone use profiles. So, we found that higher other emotion appraisal was a significant predictor. So we raised the question, could it be that adolescents that have higher scores in this emotional intelligence facet have an increased social sensitivity? They are more concerned about what others are thinking, experiencing, and that makes them more prone to try to be in touch with others and connect with others via digital technology, which makes them more prone to overuse the internet and smartphones. Also, we found that lower use of emotion and emotion regulation were significant predictors in both models. So could it be, as some studies have suggested, that given that these adolescents have this diminished capacities in this specific areas, the use of emotion and regulation of emotion, that they use the internet and smartphones as a way to cope with distress and negative emotions they're experiencing and do not know how to manage, and thus develop a pattern of coping via the internet and smartphone. And studies have suggested that problematic internet and smartphone use could be maladaptive coping mechanisms, since they do not help adolescents reduce the distress they're experiencing. We also found that older age was a significant predictor, and this is in accordance with some findings suggesting that older adolescents have a higher exposition to technology. So this result is in accordance with a lot of other studies. And we also found that being female was a significant risk factor for problematic smartphone use. And other studies have suggested that females are more socially aware, which makes them more prone to want to be in touch with others and connect with others, which could lead them to overuse their smartphones as a way to connect with others, which puts them at a risky position to develop this problematic use. Okay, and I want to finish my presentation with some remarks. First, concerning limitations, we used cross-sectional data, which of course does not allow us to imply that lower emotional intelligence is causing problematic internet and smartphone use, so some prospective studies are needed in the field. Also, we use self-report measures, which are susceptible to social desirability bias, shared method variance bias, and among others. So future studies might want to control for this biases, or use either emotional intelligence ability measures or direct measures of internet and smartphone use. Despite these limitations, we believe our study has some interesting implications for future studies. And first, there is a lack of research on personal resources that may buffer against problematic internet and smartphone use. So our results might work as an antecedent for the future work. But most importantly, emotional intelligence is an ability that can be trained. So the most important implication of our results, we think, is that training emotional intelligence facets may help adolescents managing emotional situations in an effective way, thus preventing a problematic use of technology as a way to cope with emotional distress. Okay, so that's all I wanted to share with you today. Please do not hesitate to contact me for any doubt, comment, or question you may have at my email. And I want to thank you for your attention.